there! A major claim in our 21st century is that racism still flourishes, though a different form. Many claim there are so called hidden pockets of racism, or so called many citizens harbor a subtle racism. Let's examine that. Now, common sense says that if someone hates another group, they either harm them or avoid them like they have leprosy. I'll start with white women's attitude toward black men per my poll on LiveLeak. The result was 45%. Guess what that pertains to among the following options. A, 45% of white women admit wanting to harm or exploit black men. B, 45% want to completely avoid all black men, though wishing no harm. C, 45% of white women have black men as friendly acquaintances and freely shake their hand. D, 45% are close friends with black men with hugs and kisses. Or E, 45% of white women had full sexual intercourse with black men. Ready for the answer? Okay. It's E. 45% of white women went all the way, did the nasty, had full intimate sex, and such monkey business with black men. Yet the top LiveLeak countries combined have an overall black population of only 9%. If you challenge my poll as being inaccurate and therefore giving too high a percentage, know that other polls tally higher percentages of white women having had sex with black men. If you can't show me a poll with a percentage lower than mine, then don't argue. People complain about the plight of black men, but most men would probably pay to share this plight. Even if just 9% of white women were with a black man, certainly wouldn't indicate any racism, but rather reflect the average percent of blacks in those regions. Yet the figure is quintuple or 400% higher than regional averages. Again, common sense says if we dislike someone, we stay far away from them, not do the exact opposite. What about the other 55%? Out of them, you'll have white women who had sex with non-white men of a different race, those who've never been with a black man simply because their area lacked black people, white women who lacked such sexual experience simply because they never had sex and aren't ready for it, those who've never gone black simply because they're lesbian, white women that dated a black man or had a black boyfriend, it just didn't work out, those that were never serious with a black man but had a close black friend or two or three, white women that just managed to be warmly acquainted with blacks, others that just managed to have friendly acquaintanceship with other non-white groups, and those that would never get involved with non-white men, not because of bigotry, but because they wanted to preserve their own heritage or race. Deducting all the legitimate reasons, no doubt leaves around 0%, close to 0% of racist white women. Now for why 45% of white women had sex with black men. Consider the book To Kill a Mockingbird. This book was voted the most inspirational book of all time, beating the Bible into second place. To Kill a Mockingbird focuses on a white woman having committed adultery with a black man. This book has been mandatory reading in high school since I was that age and is still mandatory reading in American schools today. It's been voted the United Kingdom's best-loved book. Besides, this book is first presented in a vulnerable time in young people's lives where they're likely contemplating their first sexual experience. It certainly presents a false dilemma, since the characters that oppose the interracial adultery falsely imprison the black man, then murder him. The author tries to trick the readers into thinking that the options are either embrace black men sexually or hate them, when there are a spectrum of options from total avoidance to close platonic friendship. Then there's the influence of movies, television shows, and commercials. Now for white men's attitude toward black men. A 538 and ESPN research survey show that only 7% of men don't watch sports, and 41% of baseball players are non-white, 70% of football players are black, or rugby, and 74% of basketball players are black. Now, white male sports fans do not root for teams based on race. They root for teams based on their region of origin. White men from Chicago will be for such teams as the Bears, Bulls, and Cubs. New Yorkers will be for such teams as the Giants, Knicks, and Yankees. Californians will be for such teams as the 49ers, Lakers, and Angels. That's true even if their star player is black. Per the other 7%, among their reasons for not liking sports are lack of team loyalty, they find sports boring, they're an artistic type where sports do not appeal to their personality, or they found other interests. This leaves around 0% of white men being racist. Now, for police officers' attitude toward blacks. Many blacks claim to be persecuted on the road and are only guilty of so-called driving while black. But the great majority of the time when police pull over vehicles, they pull them over from the back. It's difficult to quickly determine someone's race from the back of their car. So if this driving while black thing was true, we'd have to conclude that officers are willing to make their jobs harder to satisfy racism. And at night, it's impossible to determine someone's race from the back of their car. Almost impossible. Then there's outcry over all the blacks killed by policemen. Now, Centers for Disease Control noted that in 2012, police killed 123 blacks, but also killed 227 whites. And the FBI's UCR division recorded that in 2012, 2,412 blacks killed other blacks, while only 431 killed whites. So if killing proved racism, it would be blacks being racist against themselves, not the police. They also say that the far higher rate of black men going to prison than for white men demonstrates bigotry. Problem is, black women's rate is lower than the rate of white men. And black men over 45 have a lower incarceration rate than white men under 30. So you'd have to conclude that those statistics reflect bigotry against whites in favor of blacks, or in fairness throughout the whole argument. Actually, as you should be able to see, the entire persecution against non-whites argument must be thrown out as a giant hoax. A dangerous hoax indeed. Focusing on so-called persecution of non-whites prevents us from noticing the plight of the world's most persecuted minority, those with mental handicaps. We must awake to their plight and tackle this problem as soon as possible. Crying mass racism against non-whites can only lead to stealing the finances, heritage, and very lifeblood of the grand white race. This form of cultural Marxism, based on greed, envy, and hatred, must be wiped off the face of the earth. Love is protecting our extended family, which is our race. Think about it.